Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and today we have a preview of Blood and Skulls, The Crucible. Hey there gamers, it's Professor Meg here, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. Today we have a preview of Blood and Skulls, The Crucible. Now this is a current GameFound campaign, so you can check out the link down below for everything that they have planned, especially the miniatures for this game. This is a sponsored preview, and this is a prototype copy in front of me, so all rules, components, things like that are subject to change. Now in Blood and Skulls, The Crucible, you're able to play this either solo or cooperatively with 1 to 4 players throughout a campaign. And this campaign is going to be presenting you with multiple different choices. And not only is it going to have you become a hero, but more often than not, you're going to begin to become corrupted. So you do have different types of damage that you are going to be taking, but you also have other tracks that you are going to start escalating on, such as madness, corruption, and addiction. So those 3 things are going to have negative consequences for the players, and the madness and the corruption can ultimately have you turn into an anti-hero or the villain of the story, and you could even potentially die due to that. So this is going to be a campaign where every choice is not only going to matter, but it's going to shape the entire campaign for everyone, and it is going to give you a taste of that darkness if you want to see your heroes become a bit darker and perhaps an anti-hero instead. Now, taking a look here, I do have a scenario set up, and I do have it set up solo with Vandra here. So this is our character board where you're going to be tracking not only the levels of pain that you have, but also your madness, corruption, and addiction. Now this is also where you can see your different stats, such as your strength, agility, endurance, and willpower, as well as your movement, which you can see on your character card. Now players will also be gaining glory throughout the game and spending that, and that's going to be that track down here. So this is going to be your character card that players are going to place into their board here, and then you're also going to have starting equipment, so that's going to be our daggers of faith that you can see over here. Now, taking a look at this particular scenario here, something that's very interesting is that this is actually just for the preview. So you do have 3 scenarios available in this preview quick start here, but this is actually not going to be in the finished game, so there are no spoilers here. But here you can see how you're going to be setting up the different scenarios. It has the map set up for you, an intro with the flavor text, as well as your setup, the enemies that are going to be used, the waves and flow for how enemies are going to be spawning each turn, as well as your turn limit, which for this one you can see is 5. You have your victory and defeat. The victory for this one would be to close all vortexes or survive until the final turn, which would be 5 of the scenario, but there are scaling rules. So for 2 heroes, some things would change, but for solo mode, which is what we are currently set up with, you would spawn 1 spider on turn 1, then +1 per turn, but the scenario lasts 4 turns. So that actually does make it easier for us because we need to last until the final turn, meaning that in a solo version for this, we would have to last 4 turns as opposed to 5. Now, not only for this scenario, but for the campaign itself, as well as your different characters, there is a ton of lore and flavor text. So I'll leave that for you to discover, but I am going to read the intro to this first act, just so you get a taste of what the writing is like. So it says, "The crucible breathes around you. The earth trembles, walls whisper, and the air thickens with stench of rot. From the depths of the reflection, cracks open and vomit twisted creatures, born of hunger and hatred. You are not the first to walk these lands, but perhaps you are the last with a chance to endure. The echoes of those who fell before you still bleed through your stones, and now it is your turn to descend." So you can see where this is a pretty dark game where you are daring to descend into this area and fight off these different monsters, all for glory. Now, each turn in the game is going to be broken up into 3 different phases. So there's first going to be the Descent, and then the Crucible, and then the Sanctum. So the Descent is going to be the initial things that players are doing, such as moving around the board, perhaps they are firing a ranged weapon or casting magic, and this is also when you would disengage from combat if you wanted to do a different action. So during this Descent, you have 2 actions available to you. So if you did want to disengage as your first action, you would still have a second action available to you after that. So this is going to be that phase where here in the starting map, you can see that our heroes started in this area. So this is when we would be able to move. So looking at our character card here, we do have a movement of 4. So we would be able to go 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Now there are different tokens placed along the board, but this one here, we're going to be able to roll a die for it to see what we're going to get. So now that we are uncovering this mystery token, we are going to remove it from the board and we're going to roll a d6. So as you can see, the board started off with 5 and you're able to go around and get these. So on a 4, nothing actually happens. On a 3 and a 4, it would be nothing. On a 1 or a 2, though, it would actually be a trap where you would take a minor level in pain. So pain is going to be this first track here. Then you have rupture as well as terror, which represent the different ways that you're able to take damage throughout the game, but physical pain is going to be this one here. So with a trap, you would take 1 level in physical pain, and this is how you would track it, accelerating down the track as you would take pain. But if we were to roll a 5 or a 6, we would actually be able to draw a card from the equipment deck. So we're going to pretend that we rolled that 5 just to show you what this would look like, but this is a forbidden card, which is the Weeping Blade. Heretical weapons effect doubles the number of hits in combat. Consequences, each time you do so, gain +1 corruption. So as I mentioned, there is the madness and corruption tracks, and this one is each time this is used, you'll gain a level in corruption. And once you reach the end of that track, that's when you do become an anti-hero. So you want to be careful not to go too far, but there are also ways for you to reduce these tracks and mitigate using them. So there definitely may be instances where you feel using this blade is going to be worth it. Now, a few things to note during this descent phase is that the actions that you are able to do, you can only perform each action once. So while you can perform 2, you can only do movement once, and we aren't able to do any of the other special actions this turn. So that would complete our turn for us. But another thing to note is that if you are not playing with the solo mode, players would be rolling for initiative. So that's going to be your willpower. Ours is a 2. So all players would roll their own d10 and then add their willpower. So for this, it's pretty high. We would have an 11, but other players would do the same thing, and then you would perform in order of the highest initiative and then the next highest, etc., until all players have gone. Now, after that, during this descent phase, the enemies are also going to be able to activate as well in the same manner. So we do have the Daughters of Shadow, which are going to be these spiders here, and they're the current enemies of this scenario. So all of their stats are going to be on this side of the guard here. This is going to be their character art. But for the Daughters of the Shadow, they're going to do the same thing where they would roll the d10 and add their willpower. But for this current first turn, there is only 1 in play regardless. So now this one spider would use their full movement, which is 5, to move closest to us because we are their priority. There is a priority system, but where we are the only character in play, they're going to move toward us. So they're going to move 5 and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because they are going to only be able to move orthogonally. So you didn't see that when we moved because we only moved forward, but you are not able to move diagonally in this game. You have to spend 1 movement point to move orthogonally. Now, after this is going to be the Crucible phase, and this is when the attacks are going to take place. So during the descent, players are going to have that initial part of their turn where they're maneuvering around the board and performing certain actions. But if a player does end next to an enemy, that's going to immediately end their turn for the descent phase, and then they will be engaged for combat during the Crucible. So during the Crucible phase, players are going to choose between the attack types that they have available. So for example, for Vandra here, we can choose between frenzied, direct, or relentless attacks. And this is going to determine how many attack dice we are going to be rolling based on our stats. Now, if we were to choose the direct combat path, then we would be rolling the number of attack dice equal to our agility, which is going to be 4. Or we're also able to do a frenzied attack, which would attack first, but you'd only roll half of your agility dice rounded up. So for us, in that instance, it would be 2 dice. But instead, I am going to have us choose the relentless attack style instead, which is going to have us roll a number of attack dice equal to our agility plus our strength. So it does change where we go in combat, but we are going to be able to roll 4 for our agility plus 3 for our strength, meaning a total of 7 dice. Now again, once we choose our attack style, we are going to roll 1d10 plus our agility. So this is going to be a 7 plus 4 for us, meaning an 11 for where we are in initiative. We will do the same thing for the spider that is out there. So his agility is a 3 plus 8, meaning that they are actually the same, which would be an 11. Now in this instance, that's actually okay because we have different attack types, because the Daughters of the Shadow, this one spider over here, has a direct attack. So they're actually going to be attacking us first before we would attack back. Now, due to that, they're actually going to attack us. So because they're using the direct method, they're going to be able to roll 3 dice because that is their agility. So they will roll the 3 dice against us, and this is actually pretty great for us because the 1 and the 2 are actually going to be misses, and this 3 is going to be a push, but we are able to defend. So we do have a 3 for that, so we're going to be able to roll 3 dice, and if we are able to roll, and we were able to, so every die of the same type will be able to defend against it. So where we rolled a 3, we're able to block out with a 3, and that would stop a push. If they had rolled another 3 and we had rolled this instead, we would only be able to stop 1 push and they would push us back, meaning that we wouldn't be able to engage them in combat this round. But another thing is that on a 5 or a 6, that is where you're going to be doing the levels of pain, which is going to be damage. So these spiders actually do start off with 2 levels of pain for the scenario, but I'm just not going to track that as we're going through the preview. But just know that on a 5 or a 6, that means the damage will go through instead. Now, when it came time to the relentless attacks, we would be able to use our turn to attack back. So, as I said, we are able to use our strength plus agility, which is going to be a total of 7 dice for us. So, we would be able to roll all of that for ourselves. That was not a good roll at all, but we were able to do 1 damage. Now, they would still be able to defend in the same way, so they do have 2 endurance, so they would roll to defend, and they're actually able to defend against that damage anyway. So you can see the push of pull of what is going to happen, but also note that this is the tutorial, so a lot of things are going to change as you progress your characters. Now there are a few special rules for the spiders as well, where if they had done any damage to us at all, at least 1 damage, they would inflict an additional level of pain. So that is going to be their venomous fangs, meaning that if they had done 1 damage to us during that round, they would have done at least 2 instead. They also have clinging web, which makes it so that we are not able to disengage or run away from them, and you can only be freed by killing the spider. But there's also terror, which is engaging this creature in combat for the first time in the act inflicts +1 minor level of terror. So that means that over here on our terror track, engaging the spider at all is going to have us take a level in that. Now those are going to be the special rules for the spiders, but as you can imagine, there are unique rules for all of the different enemies. So these are enemies for future acts, and I have their miniatures out so that you're able to see them as well, but they are all going to behave very differently depending on the special rules that they have available. Now, after the Crucible phase is going to be the Sanctum phase, and players are only able to engage in the Sanctum actions if they are not engaged with an enemy, and that can include taking out an enemy that is engaged with you when you are attacking them. But in order to be able to engage with these, you cannot be engaged with an enemy. Now, again, similar to the Descent, players are going to be able to perform 2 actions, and they're going to have Now, similar to the Descent phase, players are going to be able to take 2 actions. So during the Sanctum, you're going to have multiple actions available to you, but you're able to take up to 2. So you're able to do the Ritual of Redemption, you're able to exchange equipment or donate them, you're able to use healing spells, and you're also able to use hero rituals, which is something unique that you will need to unlock. Now, these rituals are what is going to cost you glory that you are going to be tracking down here, and there are multiple ways for players to gain glory as well. But it's going to be spent on these rituals, and that's how you're going to be mitigating the negative effects that are happening to you just by being in the Crucible. So you're going to have your madness, corruption, and addiction, which you are able to reduce, but you also have your pain, your rupture, as well as your madness, your terror that you are able to reduce with these rituals as well. So again, you're going to have to spend glory to be able to do so, but then you're going to be able to reduce yourself in these levels, making your hero a bit better to be able to survive longer in the Crucible. Now, finally, something that's very interesting for the flavor of the game is that when a character remains untainted and completes the scenario without corruption, madness, or addiction, you're going to gain access to special actions that are only meant for heroes. So you have to prove yourself worthy, that you are not engaging in these current things, or at least you're spending glory to get rid of them. If you are untainted, you will be rewarded for your purity and have actions available to you as well. So this is an example where you can see that the campaign really unfolds based on the decisions that you're making. Now, players are going to be gaining items throughout the game in different ways. So you have your starting equipment, but you're also going to have these mystery tokens where you're able to draw cards from the equipment deck. But some enemies will also have loot abilities where you're able to gain loot from them when you beat them. Now, we don't have that for this instance with these spiders, but that will happen in the future, and that's another way for players to gain cards. But all of these cards are going to vary in the different ways you're able to use them as well. Some of them are going to be forbidden, where perhaps they are calling to you but something bad is happening, which you can see with our Weeping Blade. Some of them are going to be arcane spells that you are able to cast and then spend. Some of them are going to be armor, which you will keep with you always, and some of them are going to be these addictive substances that players are going to engage with. So it is going to give you a benefit, which is why you're going to want to use it, but depending on your levels of addiction, you'll have to continue using it round after round, which is going to ultimately have negative consequences. Now, another optional thing that players are able to use with the different scenarios are going to be the turbulence cards as well as the secrets. So the turbulence cards are going to be ones that you will reveal at the beginning of each scenario. So this one here is the Fog of Silence. Whispers die in the mist, and the world forgets your name. Effect: heroes cannot spend glory during the first 2 turns of the scenario. So if you were hoping to spend some glory to mitigate anything, you are not able to do so for yourself until after the first 2 turns of the scenario. And in this example, you know that we only have 4 turns, so that is a pretty short timeline. So that's an example of turbulence that is going to be affecting all players. And the flavor text here says, centuries may turn to dust, yet the great grief lingers. The very stones remember a silent, pervasive ache in the heart of the age. And then there are also secrets that players are able to do, which will be personal secrets that you gain at the beginning of the scenario. So, for example, here we have a blood oath. Only when the blade drinks deep does the spirit awaken, shed of its mortal filth. Pain is proof of devotion. You swear to face agony without fear. Do not roll defense die voluntarily during one combat. So at least just during one combat you would have to do so. And then your reward during the Sanctum phase, after fulfilling this oath, gain +1 glory and draw 1 random arcane equipment card. So you can see where that can be something very beneficial for you. But if you're playing with other players and not solo, they may be confused why you're not choosing to do certain things, such as protecting yourself. Now, a lot of the rules that I've gone over are for the scenario, but there are rules for the campaign as well. So there are rules for how you will start off your campaign, setting up the different scenarios, and when you start your characters, for this quick start, we do have a certain Crucible mark, but there are things called Crucible marks that players are going to have that they start off with at the beginning of the game as well. So when you are playing the full game, this will be part of your character development, but for Vandra, for example, here, she has the Mark of Primordial Blood. In your lineage, spilled blood is a summons to fury. The wound awakens ancestral violence. After taking your first damage in combat, add +1 die to your next melee attack, usable once per scenario. So you can see where you have these scenario abilities as well that you're able to use, as well as our special rules here, which are also once per scenario. We have War Cry, and with War Cry we're able to add +2 attack dice to our next melee attack, and all adjacent enemies suffer -1 attack die until the end of this turn. So you can see where that's something that you may to plan in a very specific instance, especially knowing that enemies are going to be spawning at their portals, because you would want to use that when it is most advantageous for you. Now, there are going to be a whole bunch of terrain tokens throughout the game that are set up with these scenarios. So, for example, here there is the Unholy Flame, which is going to be something that is passable, but any miniature crossing or ending in the square is going to get +1 minor level of pain. So going through it is possible, but that means that you're going to be taking damage, which makes it a great target for you to be pushing enemies through. Because again, on a 3 or a 4, you're going to be pushing as opposing to dealing direct damage to them. So pushing an enemy into these flames is going to be a way for you to damage them in that sense instead. But be careful, because enemies are also able to push you around, and that flame would hurt players as well. Now, finally, up here is going to be the enemy vortex, and that's where the spiders are going to be spawning. So the vortexes are where enemies are going to spawn throughout the game, and in the future this is something that players are going to be able to close. So it's something that you're going to interact with so that it doesn't activate, and if you're able to do that successfully 2 turns in a row, you're able to close them. But another thing that's very interesting is that if you push any enemies back into their vortex, it will immediately kill them. So if you are able to perform a push in a way that you're able to push them into that area, that's going to be a way for you to eliminate those enemies. Now, all of the rules that I've gone over are from the Quick Start Guide. So there are 3 acts in there, and it's walking you through all of the initial rules that you need to know to be able to play Blood and Skulls the Crucible. But the game is going to progress in complexity as well. So as you go through the different scenarios, it's going to introduce new rules to you and things that can happen, so that you can have a sense of how the game escalates and gets more complicated, but in a way that players are able to digest slowly and be able to grasp onto, because you're going to be provided with so many different decisions throughout the game that you're going to be tempted by many things. You have these addictive items that you're going to want to use because they're very powerful. You have madness, where you have different paths that you'll have to choose from and how that affects you. And you're ultimately going to be keeping in mind how you're affecting other players with the decisions that you're making as well. We've mentioned it a lot in this preview, but this is going to be one of those games where you can be a bad guy, you can go dark, you can feed into these thoughts that you want to do the more evil things and become an anti-hero and the villain of the story, or you can try to stay as pure as possible and use these different rituals and all of the glory that you are able to gain to perhaps stay a hero and pure as possible throughout the campaign. You can check out the link down below for everything that they have planned. Thank you all for watching the Board Game Co channel. I'm Professor Meg, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!